The king was very eager to have a male child, and he began to consult with different medicine men. None of them seemed to have a solution.
highlifeng.com.
A long time ago, there lived a king named King Uzo, who had several wives. He was a very famous king, even beyond his kingdom. However, the king had a big worry. None of his wives had a male child. They all bore him female children. It was a major concern in the king's mind. He could hardly eat well because he was worried about him not having a heir apparent to the throne when he finally meets his ancestors. Among his wives was one that the king really loved so much, Queen Ifeoma. She was the king's last wife. As a result of his love for her, the king treated her very specially. Soon, this drew the anger of the other wives, and they became very jealous. The king was very eager to have a male child, and he began to consult with different medicine men. None of them seemed to have a solution except one. He called all the wives of the king and prepared a concoction that contained one single alligator pepper. The medicine man assured the king that whichever of his wives that eats the alligator pepper in the concoction will become pregnant and bear the desired male child. All the other wives ate the concoction, but nothing happened to them. They left only a remnant for the king's favorite wife, Queen Ifeoma, because they hated her so much. As she was scooping and licking the remnant, she felt a sensation in her mouth. She had eaten the alligator pepper. The last becoming first. She told the other wives, and they began to beat her to spit into their mouth. She spat into their mouth, and within a few days, it was obvious that all of the king's wives had become pregnant. The king was very happy. 9 months later, they all began to give birth one after another. Surprisingly, they all gave birth to different strange objects. It was only the last wife who gave birth to a real baby, and it was a baby boy. All the wives conspired and thrown the baby into the bush. They told her that she had given birth to a stone. They also began to tell many lies against her, and the king believed them. Eventually, the king began to dislike his once favorite wife, Queen Ifeoma. He stopped taking care of her. He stopped buying things for her. At a point, the king also stopped visiting Queen Ifoma's hut at night. In the bush, a poor old farmer picked up the child and began to nurse him. As the child grew, the farmer informed him that he was actually the son of the well-known and respected King Uzo. One day, the boy decided to go and make himself known to his father. There was joy in the king's household. But a big problem arose as regard who was the real mother of the prince. All the wives began to lay claims that they were his mother. The eldest wife decided to dance around the prince, so the prince would assume that she was his mother. But to no avail, the prince refused to choose her as his mother. And so the elders decided to end the argument by having a feast. It was agreed upon all that the king's wife would cook on the day of the feast, and who the prince tasted her food will be taken as the actual mother. On the day of the feast, all the wives, the king, the elders, the community, the villagers were all seated at the palace. All the wives of the king were all dressed, except for Queen Ifoma, because she couldn't afford to get beautiful dress for herself. The other wives brought all kinds of foodstuffs and plates to serve them. The poor wife, who was then hated by the king, could not afford much. She managed to gather some leaves and roots, with which she boiled a watery soup. The prince was called to eat from any of the plates. He came, looked at all the tasty meals that were laid out. He passed them and only went to the poor wife's food. He ate everything out of the watery soup. Everyone was amazed, and immediately the king declares that his last wife was the real mother of the prince. He drove away other wives, go on his knees and beg Queen Ifoma to forgive him and have mercy upon him for his wrong deed he has done to her. And so the prince, King Uzo, and Queen Ifoma lived in the land, and they all lived happily ever after.